Hello, tribe, and welcome to another episode of the Faye Jones Life Podcast. This is your host, Faye Jones, and today we're going to continue with our series on trauma culture. Today's topic is the normalization of trauma culture in the media. I know this is going to be an uncomfortable topic for some of you, and some of you are probably shouting right now and dancing, screaming, yes, about time somebody talked about this. That I am not going to leave anything uncovered, and that here in this podcast, we have no taboo topics. We're going to talk about all the issues because our goal is to grow and break the cycles because we're not just here for inspiration, but rather transformation. So let's go ahead and dive in. We have had such a normalization of trauma that we don't even realize it anymore. One of the ways that we do this is crime drama. Yes, how many shows is there on TV right now, as well as even in video games, where it's all about people committing crimes, people being victimized, and then the perpetrator of the crime victim blaming, and shows where often the victim is faced with skepticism about the reality of what they went through. We see this in reality TV where there is an exploitation of personal trauma for the sake of entertainment. And just to give you a few examples, we have TV shows where they focus on giving you entertainment over the fact that a person is severely overweight. They give you drama over the marriage chaos of a certain group of people and their relationships and choices and all of the dysfunction that goes on in it. We have created a culture that celebrates these things and then highlights them. Then we have shows like, popular psychologists and talk show hosts come and bring in people to air out their dirty laundry in front of the entire nation and get quote unquote advice. But literally, they are profiting, and the TV stations are getting ratings out of the pain and the dysfunction of other people. And you may be saying, well, these people sign up for that voluntarily. And that is true, they do. But guess what? If we did not watch them, if we did not endorse those shows, they wouldn't have a show to begin with. We have this culture existing also in social media, the meme culture, and sometimes memes can tend to trivialize serious issues like mental health and trauma. For instance, those memes about being triggered, influencer narratives where there's selective storytelling about how good life is, and there's nothing wrong with you sharing the good about what's going on in your life. But when you glamorize your life so much, you start to verbally and in written text minimize the real life struggles that people have. We start invalidating the real human experience. And I want to dive into these two about the social media and the influencer narrative, because this is really important. I know that you guys go on my social media and it's tough to digest it, because one minute I could be sharing something really great that happened and some happy pictures and pictures of my gardens, the chickens, some new adventure in the kitchen or anything like that. But then at the next minute, I could be sharing a very vulnerable and personal story about an incident in my life that was very difficult, but that ushered in growth. And I very purposely do that because I don't want you to see my highlight reel and think that my entire life is a highlight. Life, moments of difficulties intertwined with the good things. And the problem that we have created with social media is that we have created an addiction to hyper positivity to such a point that now we have people that are depressed and suicidal because their life does not look like Instagram, because their life does not look like the reels of the other person. Or even worse, because you're portraying a life on social media that's not really your life, that is not authentic to you. Now that becomes a problem because now when the lid gets blown off and you realize that, oh, people are about to uncover me because the life that I portrayed is not the life that I really live, it's a problem. Because, and I tell you this because I've caught people in my own life doing this. Do not sit there taking pictures, living a life with the luxury cars, luxury locations, but when you come back home, you're sleeping in an empty apartment on a mattress on the floor, and you ain't even got money to put some food in your fridge. I'd rather you show me the beginnings. I'm building a business. I'm becoming an entrepreneur, and I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I don't even have furniture yet, but I have this dream and I'm building it. And tell me how, what? I've been busting my butt off and today I got a victory and I was able to come up with enough money. Then now I have a couch. So now I'm not sleeping on a mattress on the floor. Now I got a bed. Now I got a little dining room table. I have more respect for that and the ability to celebrate that more than somebody who's trying to fake it till you make it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, in my life, what you see is what you get. When you come to my house, the same things that you see on social media, that's the same thing you're going to see when you come to my house. The same clothes you see me wear on social media is the same clothes you're going to find in my closet. The same car you're going to see on social media is the same car that's parked in my garage. The same food that you see me picture and cook on social media, that's how I eat. If you come to my house, I'll probably feed you something like that, unless you have a special request. I have no desire to live a life that's not authentically mine, and neither should you. Because that is how we keep this trauma cycle going, because part of the trauma cycle is living a life that's inauthentic, and now we're traumatizing ourselves. We are gaslighting ourselves for what? For a like? For an emoji? What is that doing to us psychologically? What is that doing to us spiritually? What is that doing to us emotionally? Another thing that goes on in social media is these viral challenges. Some of them with trends that are physically harmful, and where we think that physically harming ourselves publicly to get views and like is okay. We're damaging ourselves. Some examples is we got the Tide Pod challenge, and then we had that one challenge where people were dousing themselves with gasoline or alcohol or lighter fluid, and then they would light themselves up while they were in the shower. And I watched some of those guys, and it didn't go too well, and they couldn't put themselves out, and they ended up with third-degree burns and in the hospital. Where have we gone as society where we start to do these things like if it's normal? Where are we in society that some of our families, and I'm saying are because I don't want to be pointing the finger in one direction and act like my family is a saint, because to my knowledge, I don't know anybody who's done some of this social media stuff for my family, but I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is, because in my family I do have people who are celebrities, and no, I'm not telling you their names because it's none of your business. So I'm sure they've caved into some of these pressures. And then we got video games. We're seeing violence and desensitization to violence. How some of these games make real world violence seem harmless or less impactful. Where we have created online communities that are toxic, where cyberbullying and harassment is part of the normal culture. And let me put it for example, because this is very important. And I'm gonna put it out there. People at Walmart. We've all at some point have seen that, and we've looked at ourselves and I'm like, shoot, I better dress a little bit better because I don't want to end up on people at Walmart. Well, I'm going to tell you a story, because early 30s, I was still a military spouse back then. I'm still a military spouse till today, but my husband was active duty, I should say, at that time, and we were living in Texas. And it was around the time where the People at Walmart website was really, really popular because it had just come out. It just so happened that because I was in the leadership of home-based businesses for Fort Bliss at that time, I knew a lot of the military spouses throughout the installation from different brigades and units. There was this one lady in particular, I'm not going to say her name, but she was born with some deformities and in her body, as well as dwarfism. Somebody had the nerve to take a photograph of her and post it on the people of Walmart and start mocking her. And I was outraged. Where do we stop? And I got to physically see the embarrassment this woman went through, the shame, the hurt, the anger, the bitterness, the whole process that she had to go through, and how she was fighting so hard to have her picture removed from that website because somebody else thought it was okay to make fun of somebody else's disabilities. We have to stop participating in these things. We have to stop glorifying it. We need to start measuring the consequences of this. And this is a conversation we need to be having at home with our children, as well as in our churches, in our place of work. If we're realizing that in our place of work, in our businesses, that there's a little underlying culture of this, we need to address it and we need to put an end to it, because we cannot continue to minimize, trivialize, or glamorize trauma. It is harming our children, it is harming relationships, and it's creating a culture, a society that no longer respects each other. So what can we do aside from having those conversations that lead to greater awareness and change? Support, I'm not saying don't watch TV, but support TV shows, games, and platforms that handle trauma respectfully, where trauma is not a source of entertainment, but rather they're bringing awareness, they're bringing education, and they're having those important conversations that provoke change. Be aware of how consuming entertainment that glamorizes and minimizes or trivializes trauma is affecting your perception of other people, of the world, reality, the relationships, and everybody around you, including of yourself. These are all very important. And you may be saying, well, Faye, what does this have to do with the Bible? Everything. Love thy neighbor as you love yourself. We can summarize it there. If you don't want anybody to humiliate you and to trivialize and use your vulnerable moments or traumatic experiences for their enjoyment, entertainment, and pleasure, then why would we do that with somebody else? Why would we do that with somebody else? So there you have it. I know this episode's short and sweet because I don't want to make this drawn out. I want you to just sit and think about this. Next week, we're going to talk about how trauma culture shows up in families. And we're going to talk about how trauma culture shows up in churches or religious organizations, and how trauma culture shows up in the workplace. So we have a few more trauma culture episodes. I'm going to have, God permit, a special guest. I'm not revealing who that special guest is, but we are going to talk about trauma culture and how their life changed when trauma culture was brought to their awareness and they took the action to make the changes. So with that said, I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of the Faye Jones Life podcast. And if you want more information, other episodes, or you are wanting to read some articles, or you would like to do some coaching with me, I want to encourage you to visit Faye Jones Life. Again, my website is fayejoneslife.com. There you'll be able to get additional resources to help you on your journey to transformation. Well then, God bless and have a